Hello everyone, it's Elena and I'm back with another video, and today I'm gonna talk to you guys about the notes that I take on my laptop. So this video has two parts. One is how I set up my notes and how exactly I do all the things on there, and then I'm gonna have some general tips for you guys whenever you're making notes. But first, let me explain my system. So I have my lecture notes, which I take on GoodNotes on my iPad, and then my reading notes and supervision notes, and then my revision notes, and these are all different sets of notes. So my revision notes I take on my iPad in GoodNotes, and these are the notes which I put the most effort in terms of aesthetics, because I want these to look nice so that I'm more motivated to look at, because I'm very much one of these people where like, if it looks good, I'm more willing to read it. So yeah, I basically just have a GoodNotes notebook for every topic and every subject, and that's pretty much what I do. Now I make these revision notes from these three sets of notes. So you have my supervision notes. Those are the notes I take in a supervision, which is just a conversation with your professor. They're very short, and those are just minutes basically from a meeting. And then I have my lecture notes, which I take during the lecture. I take them on GoodNotes because I think it's easier to handwrite, because then you only write the important things down. But yeah, as you can see, those are just typical lecture notes, and I also use these to make my revision notes. So all of these notes then form the basis of my revision notes later on. And the notes we're going to talk about today are these notes, the reading notes. So the reading notes are the notes that I take in preparation for a supervision. So in these notes, I basically go over all the assigned reading, take notes on it, and I try to present the information as clearly as possible, for example with diagrams wherever it's appropriate. And I'm going to show you guys how I put these diagrams in my reading notes. So yeah, let's do it. So here's an example set of notes. These are my notes on child protection, and I'm going to use these to explain to you guys what exactly I do. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of notes. And in law school, you have a lot of reading to do, so there will be a lot of notes, and that's why it's really important that your notes are well structured, that you have a very clear layout, which you can easily go over, because, well, you have a lot of notes. Let's just put it that way. You also have a lot of reading, so it makes sense. You can't condense your notes down to 10 pages. If you can do that in law school, you're probably doing something wrong, because when you're reading over 800 pages for supervision, you should not be able to condense that down to 10 pages. You would probably be missing some details. So it's absolutely fine if they're long, but they need to be well structured in order to ensure that they're useful. So you can see here, for example, this set of notes is 48 pages long. So that's why we need a good structure. So here's how I get started. I always open a new document in Pages, and then I just put in the heading, which is just reading notes, very generic, and then I usually just put the topic behind it, just so I know what exactly is going on, and then I just copy and paste my reading list. Now, once I have all of the readings that I have to do in that document, I just space it out a little bit and make sure that the heading is rightly formatted. So for the heading, I always make it bold, and then I just make it 18 as a font size, and I put it in the middle because I like that aesthetic, but that is not relevant. Now let's get to the relevant part. Now I always space the different readings out because you need to take notes on each individual reading, so I think it makes sense to separate them like that already. And then I highlight them, and then I go into the settings, and I then change the background color. So not the color of the text, but the background of the text. And I just turn it pink for any required reading. I find it really useful because it just shows you what you really have to read for the supervision. You have to get it done, and I think pink is a color you can easily see in the document. And any further reading I should do over the holiday, I make blue, because, well, I don't have to do it there, but I think it gives you a good overview, which you can quickly see in the document of what you still have to do and what you will have to do over the holiday, and it's very easily identifiable work, which is important in order not to forget what to do. And then I just quickly put the subject and the supervision number into the header to make sure that the document easily is located in terms of like where it belongs within the subject. And that's why I also put a page number there, because in case you accidentally, throw your papers around, you can easily put them back in order. And yeah, that's what my setup looks like before I have started taking notes. I think it already starts with setting up the document, so that's why I showed you guys this. Because without doing that, I ended up doing something like I did here. These are my notes from back in high school when I took summer classes at a university. Yeah, you can see the 6,000 word document is just a long list of points. And this is what we don't want, because you are not getting anything out of this. So let me explain to you guys how I do my best to avoid this. So here are my notes on child protection. You can see there's some pink written there. The pink stuff is just stuff that my teacher sent to us. It's just guidance. That's why it's in pink, because it's not really notes. And then you can see that I again have this background behind the text. That's just for a heading, so an important topic within this bigger topic of child protection, so that I know, okay, the next few bullet points are going to deal with this. And I have this throughout the document. This just helps me structure things. And I also use the background text tool for statute. So statute is just, legal text, basically whatever the law says. I like to make them gray. For me, it makes it easier to identify what is the written law. And whenever I write something down from the statute, it is a very important provision. So that's just like a pointer for myself of this matters. I don't use a lot of color because I go over my notes later on, as you can see here, and then I use a highlighter, but I really try to limit myself with a highlighter because you can't really trust me with a highlighter too much, because I will highlight the entire page otherwise. And I know if I would give myself the option to do so on a document in Pages, I probably would. So that's why. I also use the gray background tool for marking some key things. So for example, whenever I read a journal article, I mark the thesis in gray. This was a very long thesis and I probably could have condensed this to one paragraph, but yeah. Basically, I write down all the other arguments and the interesting stuff behind the thesis without any background color, and just the thesis is gray so that I can easily spot it, because that's the key takeaway. And I sometimes do use color in documents when, it makes sense. Like for example, here with the table, for me, it made sense to visualize the colors here so that I could easier see what is a pro, what is a con, but I try to stay away from color as much as possible while writing the notes. Now, one thing that I try to do all the time is create tables. I think challenging yourself to put almost everything into a table really helps, because a table forces you to come up with categories. It forces you to think about, okay, why is this relevant? Where does this information fit in? How would this help me solve a legal problem, or whatever subject you're in, how would this help you? And it then also helps you link other information to it. So for example, for me, I always link my authorities, so the sections or cases I'm relying on for this, in the table to the information. And I find that a great way of ensuring that you really understand the information that you're writing down. And now let's get to the fun part of adding diagrams. And before we get into this, a quick trigger warning. I'm going to explain to you guys how I use diagrams with this case. This case concerns child protection. It is not a nice case, but it really shows well how diagrams can help. So under these diagrams, I usually have tables with held and obiter, so what was the actual verdict and any extra comments that the judges made. But the facts I often draw because they can be quite complicated. So you can see here, for example, 2 parents. They had 3 kids, one of them died under non-accidental circumstances, so either one of them or both of them together were responsible, so the second kid went into care, and then they had a 3rd kid. Now the parents eventually split up, so mom took the 3rd kid to her new partner, who also had 2 kids, and now the question was, could all of these 3 kids be taken into care on the basis that mom may have been responsible for the death of the first child that we talked about? So that was a question for the court, and you can see this fact pattern was quite complicated. So that's why I drew it out, and I'm sorry for the grim fact scenario, but I think this is a really great illustration of where words would just make it more complicated in your head. So that's why I prefer to draw it. So here's how I add these drawings. I just make them in GoodNotes, and I just take the pictures from Google Images. These are clip art images. I usually just put in woman, clip art, transparent background, and something pops up, or child, transparent background, clip art. And then I just export the page in GoodNotes. Make sure to export it as an image, and then do not include the page background because you don't want the squares in your document. You don't need that. And then just export it and airdrop it to your laptop with your Pages notes on it. You can also just, put it into your Pages notes on your iPad. I'm just better with making Pages notes on my laptop, so that's why I airdrop it. And then I just take it from my downloads folder and just put it in the document. Now it's usually a little too big because you use an entire page in GoodNotes, so just double click on the image and cut it to whatever size you want the image to be. Once I cut the image, I just drag it into the right position, and Pages has these yellow lines that pop up and tell you whether it's in the center or not, which I really appreciate as a perfectionist because then you know it's actually centered. And there you go. Now let's get into some general tips for note taking. So my first tip is, before you take any notes for a subject, go to your folder with all your information on a subject and take out the syllabus and read it. It will not take you long to read the few bullet points for that particular topic, but it will be a good reminder of what is important and what is actually excluded, so that you know what to actually take notes on and what you just don't need to know. Next, remember what these notes are for, because it can be tempting to put a lot of effort into reading notes, but remember, these are your reading notes, not your revision notes. Put most of your time into your revision notes. They matter. They need to look great so that you will look at them more and more. Your reading notes don't need to be aesthetically pleasing. They just need to be useful and informative. So put most of your time for aesthetics into your revision notes and know where to invest your time. Next, never take notes on the first read. This is probably the most important advice I can give. Always read the text first, annotate it, highlight it, whatever is your method. I usually underline and then I take a few notes on it. I'd recommend using post-its. So what I do is I have a post-it with CR, which stands for currently reading, one which has notes on it, so that is how far I have taken my notes. And then I have a last one, which is NT, which stands for next target, so that is how far I need to get. Using these free post-its allows you to see where you're currently at, how much you still have left, and it really allows you to visualize your progress, because you can always just lift the post-its and see how many pages you still have to read. And it also allows you to stay on track of where you have taken notes on and where you need to get going on your notes again. So you just keep an overview on where you're at within the text, which is really important. And lastly, do not treat your reading notes as done once you've typed them out. They will be massive documents, and trust me, they are not done until you have highlighted them, until you have annotated them, and probably read over them at least 2 times, because you need to be on top of the content in there. It's not enough to just read the textbook, type out the important information, but not actually have digested it. You really need to be able to apply the content. So I would recommend printing them out, because when you have, for example, a 39-page document with tabs, you need to highlight and annotate. You can also export them as PDFs and just put them in GoodNotes, but personally, I prefer paper, but whatever's your preference. But yeah, this is how I make my notes on my laptop. I hope you guys found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day. Bye!